Welcome, I'm Eric Singer, Gazette.com, and this is City Chat. Joining us as always, Mayor John Suthers, to go beyond the sound bites for questions that you need answered here in the Pikes Peak region. Thank you, sir, for being here.
Eric, glad to be with you.
And as always, my co-host, Gazette reporter, Billie, Stanton, and
Thanks, Eric. Thank you, Mayor, for coming in.
All right, we had two big issues in the last couple of weeks that we need to focus on. Stormwater and also the Pedestrian Access Act, also known as the Lie Ordinance. Billie, please go ahead.
Mayor, I think stormwater is the overarching issue for us at the moment, for you at least, having to deal with it on the EPA side and the Pueblo County side. I'm just wondering, having sat through that county commission meeting with you on Monday and heard your presentation, it seems that there are certain concessions that the city is willing to make. Colorado Springs Utilities has said, we'll go ahead and give you the $10 million out of the $50 million 5-year payment. We'll let you have the first $10 million a year early for Fountain Creek Water District, which is struggling. If you just give us the credit, we're willing to do that. We know you're hurting. And you have said and have done, created a new stormwater division. You've brought in Right Water engineers from Denver to collaborate with the local consultants, and Right Water, of course, is representing Pueblo. They've all collaborated on how to come up with projects that are the most essential, and the majority of those directly benefit Pueblo. A lot of things came up from the county commissioners, questions of can we just have a knob to turn off the project, which of course it's way more complicated than that, or can we delay the project, which would create huge problems, as you pointed out, for warranties, et cetera, on the work and the materials. I'm just wondering, I know you've been really racking your brain to try to find a way to help Pueblo County as much as humanly possible, given our limited resources in the city budget. Do you have other ideas on how to incentivize and provide enforcement mechanisms in an intergovernmental agreement so that Pueblo County will be more likely to come to some agreement with us? Not us, but the city of Colorado Springs, of which we're all a part.
Well, this is all part of a very sensitive negotiation process. On one hand, we're negotiating with Pueblo County, who issued us the 1041 permit because we want to be able to turn on the Southern Delivery System in April. On the other hand, we're negotiating with the EPA, who's threatened to bring a lawsuit for non-compliance with our MS4 permit. We're dealing with both sides in very good faith, accepting the fact that we need to dramatically improve our stormwater program, that it has in fact been significantly underfunded for the last 6 years. The Pueblo negotiations, because of this looming need to turn on the system after the testing's done, begin the warranties running, is really a critical one. And I don't want to do anything that would interfere with those negotiations. When we met down in Pueblo, and you were there, I got a sense that some of the problems, there's some concern about the amount of money. That is a very hard situation to solve. What I'm emphasizing is that the $19 million, and that's an absolute minimum. I think we're actually would be spending $20.5 million this year. That's more than what the stormwater enterprise was. And at the council, numbers like 50 million, because we have a backlog of 500 million in projects, therefore you need to put in 50 million a year. That cannot happen. We do not have access to that kind of money, and we've worked very hard to get to the point where we are. I do think there's probably some things we can do. Commissioner Hart said, what about after 10 years? I as a city official can't commit the city of Colorado Springs to something in perpetuity, but we may be able to say at the end of the 10 years, whatever funding level we're at, with an inflationary factor, whether it be 25 million or whatever, that would be the minimum for the next 10 years or something. What's going to happen now is we're on the basis of those conversations, we're going back to the table with Pueblo in the next week or two and hope that some ideas like that can be the basis of agreement. There's obviously concern about dredging down there, but that's That's complicated. When the Corps of Engineers built the levees down there, Pueblo took on the obligation of dredging the stream bed. The utilities had an obligation as part of the 1041 permit to do a dredge of the area down there. Pueblo decided in lieu of that to take $2.2 million from utilities that they were going to spend on that. They didn't do it. Now it's more expensive. So for them to come to us and say, well, why don't you do it, again, there's some issues there. All I can tell you, Billy, is we're going to continue to do the best we can within the parameters that we have, the monetary parameters, legal parameters, and see if we can't get this done. But they're very, very critical negotiations, and I'm hoping that we can get it resolved both with Pueblo and the EPA as soon as possible. The problem is with Pueblo, we've got this looming deadline that makes those negotiations very critical.
Now, is the city going to be pursuing whatever grants are possible to beef up the funding?
Absolutely. There is a stream of grants, oftentimes tied to natural disasters. So we got a lot of grant money after the Waldo Canyon fire. And we're going to continue to apply for grants. As the negotiations are right now, we said, okay, we'll limit any of the money in a particular year. Only so much of it could be grant money and things like that. I'm at the point, where I think we could say any grant money would be over and above what's spent, and that's also part of what we're putting on the table with Pueblo.
Okay. One other question regarding the stormwater issue is that this didn't come up at the county commission meeting, but at the city council meeting, at least one of the new members raised the specter of a dam, and I know that the publisher of the Chieftain down in Pueblo has repeatedly said we need a dam, and having seen dams proposed and even erected in the West before, it seems to me that it takes so long to get the permitting, to get the money, to get all of the pieces in place. Is that something that would, if it were to even be feasible, would it not be so far down the line that by the time it happened, the plan would be for Colorado Springs already to have mitigated so much stormwater that its necessity might be somewhat diminished?
Well, there's two issues with a dam. Number one, despite it having some support in Pueblo, all the reports that I have seen before talk about this not being a good location for a dam. This is a very flat expanse. We're not in a canyon or anything like that. And that the dam would have to be so wide as to cause the movement of I-25 and things like that, and it would fill up with sediment constantly, regardless of what happened. So the first issue is the feasibility of a dam. And I think some of the discussion was, let's spend, $250,000 and once and for all resolve the feasibility of a dam. And I think everybody's on board on that. But you're right, when you think at the last major dam project in Colorado, I think, was the Animas La Plata, approved in 1983, and I think it was finally completed a couple years ago. By the time you go through all the environmental things and all the permitting, all the environmental battles on species and all that sort of thing, the chances of a dam appearing in Fountain Creek anytime in the next couple of decades is not very good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's talk about the other issue in the room, which is, of course, the Pedestrian Access Act, also known as the Lie Ordinance. The passage of it and the potential that, once it's passed, guess what? Now we have the potential of the ACLU filing a challenge. Is it worth it when you think about all those things, and will it make a difference?
Well, I hope it will make a difference. One of the things that, we've talked about what we do to deal with the homeless problem in Colorado Springs. I think we have a pretty good strategy overall. I think there's a consensus that we move towards consolidated campus with delivery of services. That would be south of town at the rescue mission. I think most people feel pretty good about that. But what to do about this current problem of people spread across sidewalks, trails, impeding the traffic, things like that. This is really the only way to address that. And there are lie ordinances across the country that have been held constitutional. We pay very careful attention to cases decided in the courts. That's why we've done some retraction in our aggressive panhandling statutes to comply with cases as they're decided. But we feel this is a tool that's constitutional and we ought to use. There is simply no right to sit or lie across the sidewalk. There are plenty of benches. There are plenty of planters. There's plenty of all kinds of things where people can sit down. People can lie down in our parks. We're just telling them you can't obstruct pedestrian traffic and create a detriment to people wanting to shop downtown. This is downtown areas. We very much want Colorado Springs downtown to become increasingly attractive to people, viable. I think in the next couple of years we're going to see a lot more residential opportunities downtown. And part of the attractiveness is making sure it's a place that people want to walk, want to dine, and things like that. And keeping people from being spread out across the sidewalk is all part of that. So I think it's a constructive thing to do, and hopefully it'll make a difference.
All right, at this moment you have your opportunity to be able to give the final thoughts to the community of the Pikes Peak region, so they can hear a little bit more from your heart about what's going on in the city and what's ahead.
Well, let's talk about a big positive this week. The other night we unveiled the plans for the Summit House. And I really felt good about how that process took place. The city hired architects, and when I say the city, keep in mind we're talking about an enterprise here. This will not involve taxpayer money. The city operates an enterprise called Pikes Peak America's Mountain. We charge people to go up the road. We have a concessionaire at the Summit House. And the Summit House has outlived its usefulness. Anybody that's been up there concludes otherwise, I think, has some issues. So we need to build a new Summit House. We went through a process. I think we got great architects. We got a good contractor. Both have a lot of local credibility. We went through a process where designs were, very conceptual drawings, and got a lot of public input. And as a result of that, came up with something that is somewhat minimalist, which the Forest Service is going to insist upon that it, but I think it's going to be great, and I think it's going to have a super exhibit area, a lot better eating facilities, going to take advantage of the views in a way that the current Summit House doesn't, and we think that we're going into a fundraising, well, we know we're going into a fundraising mode at this point, with the hope of breaking ground in early 2017. We'll do a little bonding using the revenue stream from the highway to do some bonding, but we're probably still going to have to raise $15–20 million. And I think it's going to be a huge asset for the community.
All right. Thank you so much, Mayor John Suthers. Thank you
bet,
for
Eric.
being here.
Thank you. Billie?
Thank you, Mayor.
Billie Stanton, Anleu, as always. And thank you for watching City Chat, of course, where we go beyond the sound bites to get you real information about real issues facing the Pikes Peak region. Until next time, I'm Eric Singer, Gazette.com.